Welcome to this series that we're doing about tarot cards and each sign of the zodiac. So we've already done the first two, Aries and Taurus, and now we're into Gemini. So with Gemini being the third sign, we see that we're moving away from what's personal to ourselves, and we are establishing connections with others. And so, as it goes with Geminis, if you are a Gemini sun, you probably surround yourself with people. You aren't necessarily one to be alone for too long of a stretch of time. And because you just like somebody to chat with, maybe if you are less about like seeing someone in person, you're constantly texting or calling people or doing some sort of messaging, or just writing, the good old fashioned writing. So, what we expect to see, obviously, is the Lover's card, which is the major arcana card tied to your sign. It features two individuals, one male and one female, and it's about the union. And so it's about polar opposites almost existing in one person. Are you coming into a time where you're making the space for another person into your life that's going to help balance you, that's going to help bring you some sort of clarity and some higher form of consciousness? And so that's what we see with Gemini moving into the air suits, or in tarot, it's the swords. And the swords are all about intellect, being able to understand others around you, so putting yourself in other people's shoes. They usually do this by playing like devil's advocate, but it also helps them easily move through conversations and social situations because they're so adept at understanding other people. And it's often due to the fact that they have such a shifty nature that they're never just solid in one frame of mind or mindset for too long, that they are so versatile in their way of thinking that they can just move, bounce around. And so the Geminis that I personally know are very much like that. They, from the start of one day to the end, there's just such a range of activities and such a range of meeting people, and interacting with people throughout the day of all different kinds. And it's really interesting to see them expel that kind of energy because, again, we're at the beginning of the zodiac, so we still have a lot of energy to kind of greet the day with. Springtime is very buoyant, is very colorful, is very lively. And so with Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, we definitely get a lot of that kind of like nervous, like bounce, 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 kind of like almost like a bunny rabbit or something, just spurts of energy. Now, with the tarot, we mentioned the swords. So anything from the sword suits we can expect to see here with Gemini, because it is tied to the air signs. And also the court cards, Queen and King of Swords. Those are like more so specific people when you get a reading. They're people in your life, or you, if it comes out first, is typically signifying an actual person. Whereas the major arcana is more of an idea. It's more of something that you're experiencing, more of like almost like a life lesson that you're going through at the moment. So I feel like major arcanas really do hold the heavier weights, and then the minor really serves as more of smaller things along the road of your major arcana journey that you're experiencing. Not that they should be diminished in any way, but they're like little chapters where the major, if say you get like the death card, then your book is all about transformation. And then the little chapters that come in between are the things that happen along that road for transformation, which a lot could. So I kind of look at it that way, like it's leading up into a bigger story. But yeah, those are ones we expect to see: the Lovers, swords. But the fun thing about this video series so far is that for Aries and Taurus, we got none of the expected cards. And so I think I'm more excited to see what else we can understand about these signs through some of the cards that aren't necessarily specifically associated to them. So that's what we're going to find out today. So with Gemini, let's pull some cards here. Okay. Okay. So this one, I can't say totally surprised by. It is our sword suit, and it is the beginning of the sword suit. So just like Gemini is the first air sign, we have the first swords card. And so this is really about, like we were talking about, just it's almost intelligent communication. It's expressing yourself in a very successful way. Surely that can come sometimes with a little bit of manipulation, but I think most Geminis out there use their intellect for the better. And it's not meant to be deceptive or any way. It's just people have a harder time wrapping their heads around where exactly they stand because they seem so like back and forth kind of a thing. And so Ace of Swords is really about starting in a new direction. It's very springtimey, but it is signified by the gray. And I think gray is so prevalent in the sword suit because gray also represents indecision. And that's a really big thing with the air signs too, um, because they are so intellectual that they have a harder time almost trusting the information or relating to it personally because they are opposite fire or wands, and that is the soul, that is the heart. And so fire signs may not be as quick-witted or as intellectual or be able to understand other points of view as easily as an air sign, but they are very in touch with what they need, like their soul needs. And so they recognize what's wrong in the moment, but they have to be in the moment as opposed to detached from it like an air sign could be. And so I think that's why we get the gray with the sword suit. One, because it's all about making up your mind, and both Gemini and Libra really have a hard time doing that. I'd say Aquarius is a lot quicker at fixing itself. It is a fixed sign to one train of thought or one concept, no matter how far out it may be. But Gemini and Libra really go back and forth because they are both symbolized by the duality. You have with Gemini the twins, and then we have with Libra the scales, and there's two on that apparatus. And so it's really about having like this split sense of self and identity, and having to navigate through it could be really tricky. And so you always kind of feel like if you're a Gemini, that you're always at the beginning of a road of thought. Like you feel like you're always starting your engines down a road of intellectual capabilities. I have so much Gemini on my chart that I could really, really identify with this because I just get these ideas out of nowhere. Like they're just constantly hitting me up, and I'm just like, I am in the middle of something else right now. I really don't have time for you. But then I have this surge that I just need to write it down. I need to just get it out there. And so I use like methods like Twitter or notes or something if I feel like it's not polished enough to just send out, to just try to get it out of my head, because it's just like a constant like open door of communication, and it's really hard to just kind of channel that when you want it. I feel like it maybe surprises you more, and I think that's something that we can see with the sword suit is that it's more capable of being unpredictable as opposed to very concentrated. And definitely with the air signs, there is a sense of unpredictableness because they are separated from kind of more of those soul inner needs like the fire signs have. Like the fire signs are kind of like the world's protagonists. I feel like, your birthday is represented by your sun and where it's positioned in the sky. And so that tells you right off the bat, that's a fire sign, that's Leo. And so I think we all are Leos to some degree. We're all very personal and intimate with ourselves. We all have a unique heart and understanding of it. But the air signs have a harder time balancing their heart needs and their mind needs because they live so much up here. And they don't like to come down to this level. If we're thinking about it visually, not that they find it condescending, but that's just not their forte. That's not their modality. And so relating things to themselves, they often have a really hard time doing. But they understand so well other people and their needs that, it's hard to not, kind of almost be intrigued or really be thankful that we do have air signs around us. So Ace of Swords beginning, it looks like there's always a rocky start. There's mountains at the bottom. There's gray, so there's indecision too. So, at the beginning of any kind of train of thought or idea or concept, or even conversation, this could really be about conversations too, which is all Gemini. It's all communication. You guys start that off. And so maybe you're the one that initiates conversation. Maybe you're the one that sends out the group text. Maybe you're the one that, greets somebody, as you're going into a place. You're the first one to speak up in class. I think we often find that. Maybe you're the teacher that starts the class. So all of those things are really about initiating and opening a door of communication and conversation. And really it's about learning too, because once you open a conversation, you never know what will come out of it. That's that unpredictable nature. It is not set in stone. It's not predictable. Sure, everybody has their idiosyncrasies and kind of social faux pas that we all follow that, we say, oh no, it's no worries, when really it is a worry and we're all talking about it behind each other's backs. But we fall into these kind of social constructs, and maybe that's something that we can also identify here with the air signs, that there is truth and then there is not truth. So I think with air signs, there are these implications to always please others or to put others' feelings first. And maybe this is the suit or the sign that we get all of these social kind of norms, where, you kind of feel trapped in this conversation where you have to apologize for something that you really don't feel like is your fault. You have to just kind of almost like people please to maybe not take the direction of the conversation into weary territory. Maybe you don't feel like it's the right place to say your truth or to say what you're really feeling. And so all of that can make the air suits very, not wishy-washy, but I think that's, if you guys feel like people have a hard time trusting you, that's probably why, is because it's really harder for the rest of us to kind of understand what you truly feel, because there's not always like an honest approach to conversations and communications with you guys. It's more about not really disrupting the vibe, or kind of navigating around things. And so it's very hard to have almost direct communication sometimes, even though ironically you guys represent communication. It's not usually direct. And so that's something that we often have trouble with. I'd say the most direct communicator would be Aquarius, not only because if you look at Aquarius in the chart, it's got Aries in the third house, and God, don't we know Aries is nothing but direct, brutally. But we also have a fixed sign, and fixed signs are way more in tune with their own needs and are more concentrated energy, whereas Gemini could get a lot of different things done, at once. Aquarius is one goal, one really big goal that maybe is serving a higher purpose that is really going to change things for the better, hopefully, if it's a good Aquarius. And so that's the difference. You know, you guys are both air, you guys are both concept based, but one is going a lot farther into the universe, and one is keeping it a little more personal, a little more around your everyday surroundings. So you could find yourself getting a lot more done, but the Aquarius personality would be doing things on a bigger scale. And maybe it's not as noticeable either because they're not like everyday things. So I'm talking about a lot of stuff here, and I guess this this energy of Gemini is just really opening all of these concepts up because I don't feel like I was going on such tangents in the other two videos. So let's see what other card we can get before I just make it all about that card, Gemini. Oh, okay. So here we go. So this is a surprise. I mean, kind of to some degree, because I usually feel like this represents a school. You know, all the yellow represents insights and learnings, but also represents youth, like youthfulness, and so definitely the white, the purity. And these look like two children or two very young people exchanging a cup, but it has growth. And so the cup and the wish is shared, the desire is shared. And so there's a goal here between both of them to kind of reach their dreams or to inspire each other. And when this is reversed, you know, you have a hard time of almost getting away from your past. And this is a great card to draw because this brings up the ever popular subject of Mercury retrograde, which is first and foremost associated to your sign. Sure, Virgo does share Mercury with you, but you are the dominant ruler of that planet, so it does impact you guys the most and is tied to you guys the most. So we see this reversal, this upside down, and I think that's really retrograde nature. It's more so taking, it's putting the car in reverse. That's what it really is for you guys. You know, you're going backwards, you're going down the same roads that you've been down before, and you're like, well, this looks really fucking familiar. Like, I'm having major deja vu. Like, did I dream of this already? Or what? Has this actually happened before? Like, that's what Mercury retrograde really feels like. You just like, I know I've done this before in some capacity, but it's being presented again. And it's really about finding something maybe that you didn't before. You know, a retrograde is really, I like how we're finally getting over the initial inertia of Mercury retrograde and how we all just kind of like dread the thought of it. I think now we're kind of stepping more into making it an opportunity to find like the Easter egg or something that was hidden, something that maybe was a little more apparent than we gave it credit to, because that distracted Mercury energy sometimes really has a hard time pinning down one thing. And so I think with Gemini looking at all things at once, it can easily lose sight of the thing that's really there for them. If you guys agree with that, I certainly can attest to that for me with all of my Gemini placements. And the retrograde is really about zooming in on a picture that was already taken, a text that you received and you weren't really sure what the thinking behind it was or what the details of it were, a contract you might have signed, you know, it's just all of that. A return journey home. I think a lot of Mercury retrogrades, you see people going visiting their home. You know, it's going back on the road and just stuff like that. So we see exes come up. A lot of things from your past tend to resurface. And Cups is really that. Cups is less about like job stuff, but it's more about love stuff. But Cups are the slowest moving or second to slowest, but Earth and Cups. Maybe Cups is a little faster, but Cups usually is represented by love. And we see, wow, there's even more. So not only is the color yellow and blue highly associated to the sign of Gemini, we see the duality. We see two people here, and we see the masculine and feminine. And so, wow, like, doesn't this tie up Gemini? And there's a school in the background, and there's learning. The cups are symbolizing that that growing, growth through love. And so this could be like a first love for you guys, somebody that you really have a hard time letting go of, and that you're very fond of still to this day. It could even be your high school sweetheart that maybe isn't so much anymore, but you just never really got over it. And so that's what it is. The connections that you have in your early childhood, your teen years, it looks like they tend to resurface a lot and a lot. I mean, Gemini is tied to school, and definitely high school. So, whether you end up working at one yourself or the same one that you attended, you feel like you're constantly reliving almost that time of your life. And so it feels very youthful, very vibrant, very educational, but you have a hard time of like fully going off maybe in like an Aquarian direction where you're just kind of letting go of everything, that's tied to you, fully independent. And so you guys have a little bit of that starting out the signs, but you don't have full independence. You're very much attached to the things that are happening in your life, and you spend time constantly cultivating them. Just like we talked about the Gemini, how it can do so much from the beginning of a day to the end. You're checking in with those same people again and again. You're going to your favorite coffee shop, the movie theater. It's all about your attachments to your surroundings. And so that's really what we see with you guys. And I feel like I'm pretty satisfied with just drawing two cards, obviously two cards for Gemini, and these really do sum up a lot. Very cool, kind of unexpected. I wasn't really expecting either of these, but I have gotten this in a reading before and ultimately have associated it to Gemini, but it's not my go-to because it's more of a cups nature, even though you guys do represent the lovers. But the lovers doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be in and out of relationships all the times. I think it's likely because you are an air sign and you are about connecting, and so you do find it easier to connect to people. So that is a natural thing, but I think lovers ultimately represents a duality of yourself. So it's coming into more clarity about who you are and the different facets of your personality. And so when you are going through a lot of struggle, maybe you guys have the ability to almost detach from your situation and see it through a different lens, whether that's somebody else or something that you can do yourself. And that evokes the duality, evokes the other nature, and just allowing you to have some sort of clarity, because you're able to put on different shoes kind of at any moment. And then I think the only really Achilles heel, if we're talking about shoes, is that Mercury retrograde, because it shows that, well, have you really moved away from this? A lot of signs have trouble with letting go of their past. I'd say you guys don't have it as bad as like the Earth signs would, or even Libras do, because I definitely feel like Libras have a tough time with that. But and just thinking about it, both you and Libra share your planets with an Earth sign, so maybe that factors in too. Oh my God, so does Aquarius. Yeah, there's Saturn influence. So maybe that's the trend with the air signs, is that they don't fully go in that direction because there's that Earth nature sharing their planet or their personology and just tying them to real world stuff. And that's also why you guys impact the real world and you make so much progress for us, because you are committed to helping the Earth in any way you can. And so I think that's pretty cool to see. Anyways, I'm not going to talk anymore. I know you probably catch yourself saying that quite a bit, but it's true. I'm going to end this video, I promise. So 2 cards, really cool ones to get. Yeah, let me know what you guys think, and stay tuned for the rest of the signs if you're at all curious.